Man, when you hear about George Foreman passing away at 76, it really kind of makes you stop and think. The guy's name, it's like everywhere, right? I mean, whether you were a huge boxing fan or just, cooked a burger on one of his famous grills.
Yeah, no doubt. That grill, I mean, it's crazy how that thing alone basically made him like a household name for, a whole new generation of folks.
Yeah.
But looking at the stuff you sent over, it's clear there's a whole lot more to him than just boxing and those lean, mean grilling machines. This deep dive, it's going to be interesting, that's for sure.
You got that right. And the material you dug up, it's fantastic. The George Foreman story, it's so much bigger than just the ring and those grills. So what we want to do today is really break down those big moments, the twists and turns of his life, and try to understand what made his career so special and, well, so long-lasting.
And the thing is, when you look at the numbers, it's almost unbelievable. Olympic gold in '68, then a two-time world heavyweight champion. And get this, 21 years between those titles.
Wow.
He was 45 when he won that second one, the oldest ever. And that record, 76 wins, 68 knockouts. Think about that. Almost twice as many knockouts as Ali. It's the start of one heck of a story.
All right, so let's rewind all the way back. Born in Marshall, Texas, 1949, raised with 6 siblings by a single mom in, the segregated South. It sounds like his early years, they were pretty tough. Growing up in that system, it meant facing discrimination, in every aspect of life.
Yeah.
Education, opportunities, just day-to-day living. I mean, that must have had a huge impact on him.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And the sources, they paint a pretty vivid picture. Dropping out of school, getting mixed up in street robberies. It was a rough environment. He was a young guy searching for something.
And then boxing, it's like it became that outlet, that turning point where he found some direction, some focus. It's almost like, I don't know, classic, right? Sports giving structure and purpose.
It really is. Yeah. And the talent, I mean, it was obvious from the start. 19 years old, Mexico City Olympics, and boom, he takes home the gold. You couldn't ask for a better start to a pro career.
And he didn't just start strong, right? I mean, he kept that momentum going, 37 straight wins to kick things off. That's just pure dominance, no matter what era you're talking about.
Absolutely. The early 70s, he was just this force of nature. And it all led up to that first world heavyweight title in '73 against Joe Frazier, who, by the way, had never lost a fight before. 6 knockdowns in the first 2 rounds. 6!
Yeah.
In Kingston, Jamaica. That fight, it just showed you the power this guy had.
And then, of course, you have the Rumble in the Jungle in '74. I mean, just the name itself, it's legendary, right? Ali, Foreman, Kinshasa, Zaire. And the sources, they really highlight not just the fight, but everything surrounding it, the cultural and political significance to Black American heavyweights in Africa.
Yeah, it was huge. And the context, it's important. Ali was the underdog. He'd been stripped of his title 7 years earlier. Most people, and this is in your sources, most people thought Foreman would just walk all over him. I mean, even Foreman himself said that some experts were predicting Ali wouldn't last 1 round.
It's funny, Foreman said he felt comfortable going into that fight. Kind of strange considering what happened, right? But I guess it shows how confident he was back then.
Yeah, he had every reason to be. But then you had Ali, a master strategist. He came up with that rope-a-dope strategy. For anyone who's not familiar with it, maybe you could explain how that worked.
Yeah, so basically, Ali, he kind of leaned back against the ropes, almost letting Foreman punch him. The idea was to tire Foreman out while Ali conserved his own energy. He used the ropes to absorb some of the impact, too.
And it worked like a charm. By the 8th round, Foreman was exhausted, and Ali saw his chance, delivering the knockout punch. It was a huge upset, one of the biggest moments in boxing history.
And then this is where it gets really interesting. Foreman actually said later on that losing that fight was the best thing that ever happened to me. Kind of makes you wonder, what changed his perspective so much?
It's a wild thing to say, isn't it? Maybe that loss, it forced him to look at himself in a different way. Maybe it made him realize he wasn't invincible.
Yeah.
And maybe, just maybe, it put him on a path he never would have considered before.
Because just a few years later, 1977, after another loss, he retires from boxing. But this wasn't just your average athlete hanging it up. He becomes an ordained minister.
Bro.
What do the sources say about why he made such a drastic change?
It was a complete 180. He started the Church of the Lord Jesus Christ in Texas. His whole thing was, I got to get my message out, and preaching was how he wanted to do it. The sources point to like a real spiritual awakening after that Ali fight. He felt like he had a bigger purpose than just boxing.
And it sounds like he started small, preaching on street corners, at people's houses. But eventually he built it up, got enough to buy land, and built a church in Houston. That's dedication, man.
No doubt. He found a new way to connect with people, help them out, share what he believed in. But then fast forward 10 years, and boom, he's back in the ring. 1987, 38 years old. After all that, what made him come back?
Well, the sources say the main reason was to raise money for his youth center. Pretty admirable, right? Coming back to give back to the community. And it wasn't just a one-off thing. He went on to win 24 more fights.
Showing everyone he still had it. He did lose to Evander Holyfield in 91, but even that wasn't the end. Then came 1994, 45 years old, knocks out Michael Moorer, who was undefeated at the time, to win the heavyweight title again. Oldest champ ever. I mean, can you imagine?
45. In boxing, that's practically ancient. That second title, it's one for the history books. Nobody saw it coming, and it just adds another layer to an already amazing career.
Totally. It solidified him as a legend. But right around that same time, in 94, he starts on a whole different path to success, something that would make him a household name in a totally different way. He agreed to put his name on a grill.
The George Foreman grill is like an American institution at this point. And get this, the sources say he made way more money from those grills than he ever did from boxing. Kind of blows your mind, right? One guy, massive success in two completely different worlds.
It does. I mean, it shows you he had this business savvy that maybe wasn't as obvious when he was fighting. He tapped into something big, and the rest is history. And on top of all that, he had a big, close family. 5 marriages, 12 kids, and he named all 5 of his sons George.
All 5 of them, George.
Yeah.
That's something else. He said he did it so they'd always have something in common, and he had this idea, if one of us goes up, we all go up. If one goes down, we all go down. Real strong sense of family, like they were all in it together.
It paints a picture of a man who valued connection, legacy. And all those tributes that poured in when he passed away, it shows just how many lives he touched.
For sure. Mike Tyson said it best. Foreman's contribution to boxing and beyond will never be forgotten. That sums it up perfectly. And the Ring magazine called him one of the greatest heavyweights of all time, an icon of the sport forever. That's high praise coming from the boxing world.
And his family's statement, it was beautiful. They talked about him being a preacher, a husband, a father, a grandfather, someone who cared about others. They emphasized his faith, his humility, his sense of purpose, and how important it was to him to leave a good name behind. It's a really moving picture of his life.
So after this deep dive into George Foreman's life, what stands out to you the most about his legacy?
For me, it's got to be his ability to reinvent himself. I mean, he reached the top in this brutal sport, then totally transformed himself spiritually, and then found a whole new kind of success in the business world. It's like he was constantly adapting, constantly searching for his purpose. And of course, that second heavyweight title, coming back after all those years, that's got to be one of the greatest sports stories ever told.
Yeah, it's crazy. Winning that title 2 decades after his first, it's like something you'd see in a movie.
I know, right? It shows you the kind of determination and resilience he had. And it leaves us with something to think about. George Foreman, the boxer, the spiritual leader, the businessman, what part of his legacy will last the longest? And what can we all learn from his journey? How is it possible to find success and meaning in so many different ways?
That's a great question to leave everyone with. Thanks for sharing all this great material and letting us explore the incredible life of George Foreman. It's a story that keeps on giving.